Long ago, nestled between dense mountains and foggy marshes, there lay a secluded village known as Yews Hollow. The village, although quaint and peaceful on the surface, was cursed by ancient laws passed down through generations. One of the cruelest among them was the law of the shamed mother, a brutal punishment for any woman who bore a child out of wedlock. In this land, purity was not just tradition, it was tyranny. The story begins in the humble wooden house of Master Kwan, a respected teacher in the village. His wife, Lady Xian, paced back and forth with tears in her eyes, her voice hoarse from crying. "Why? Why did you do this to us?" she cried out, slapping her chest in agony. Her daughter, Lian, sat quietly in the corner, her hands trembling over her swollen belly. The secret she had kept for months could no longer be hidden. She was pregnant. Master Kwan sat silently in his cane chair, staring at Lian with eyes filled with pain and disappointment. He was a man known for wisdom, for raising generations of scholars, but at that moment, he was just a helpless father. You've brought disgrace to our family," he finally said, his voice low and bitter. "Tell me who the father is." But Lian shook her head. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Lady Xian lunged forward and slapped her across the face. "You don't know? How could you not know?" Tears streamed down Lian's cheeks, but she said nothing more. The family was trapped. In Yews Hollow, such a scandal could not be contained for long. If the villagers found out, Lian would be subjected to public punishment, humiliation, beatings, and possibly death. And worse, the entire Kwan family could be banished, their land taken, their name erased. "We have no choice," Master Kwan finally said, standing up. "We must hide her. Keep her inside. Until the child is born, then we'll figure out what to do." But Lady Xian began, but he cut her off. "Not another word. If this gets out, it won't just be Lian who suffers. We all will." They locked Lian in the back room, covering the windows with cloth and silencing any noise. Day after day, Lady Xian brought her meals in secret, whispering prayers to the gods that this nightmare would somehow end. But rumors are like smoke. No matter how tightly you try to contain them, they find a way to escape. One early morning, chaos erupted in the village. The town bell rang furiously. Cries echoed from every direction, a woman with child. A shameful woman. The villagers gathered like a storm, their torches flickering in the gray dawn. Lian had been discovered. Someone had seen her shadow through the curtain, or perhaps someone close to the family had spoken. The punishment was immediate. Stripped of her clothing, Lian was dragged to the village square, her swollen belly exposed for all to see. Master Kwan and Lady Xian were forced to kneel beside her, chained and mocked. The village magistrate, Lord Wei, stood tall on the platform, his cold eyes showing no sympathy. "Lian Kwan," he bellowed, "you have violated the sacred laws of our land. Speak now. Who is the father of the child?" but Lian only lowered her head and stayed silent. The crowd roared in anger. She won't speak. She protects the criminal. Lord Wei nodded to his guards. Then let the punishment begin. Lian was beaten with bamboo rods until her skin was crimson. Her mouth was sewn shut with black thread. Then, as tradition demanded, she was bound to a bamboo raft and set adrift on the river that ran through Yu's Hollow. It was believed that the river would wash away her shame or drown it. As the raft disappeared into the mist, Lady Xian collapsed in tears. "My baby, my poor Lian." That night, the village went silent, pretending justice had been done. But justice had not been served. At midnight, strange things began to happen. Animals howled in terror. The air grew cold. People whispered of shadows moving outside their windows, of a woman's soft sobbing echoing through the trees. And in the heart of the Quan family's house, Lady Xian awoke to a chilling sight: the silhouette of her daughter standing at the foot of her bed, soaked in river water, her mouth sewn shut, and her belly bleeding. "Lian!" she gasped, her voice trembling. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared. The nightmare was just beginning. Days turned to nights, and the whispers never stopped. In the wake of Lian's execution, the village of Yu's Hollow attempted to return to normal. Children played, old men gathered at the tea stalls, and Master Quan and Lady Xian stayed hidden behind closed doors, mourning not only the death of their daughter, but the slow, suffocating collapse of their own lives. But the river was restless. Fishermen began returning with empty nets. The fish, they said, had vanished. Worse, those who lingered near the eastern river bend at dusk reported seeing a white figure standing on the water, her long hair floating unnaturally, mouth sealed with black thread bleeding. "She's back," they whispered. "The shamed girl. The one who never screamed." In the middle of all this, a young servant boy named Ren, working in Lord Wei's estate, began noticing strange things. Every night, he would hear a girl humming outside his window, always the same haunting tune. When he looked, there was no one there. One night, he left a bowl of rice by the door as an offering. The next morning, the rice was gone, but the bowl was filled with blood. That evening, during a private gathering at Lord Wei's estate, the noble families of Yu's Hollow feasted under candlelight. Lord Wei raised his cup and spoke with pride. "Let this be a reminder," he said. "The laws exist to protect order. Justice has been served." But as he drank, he gagged. A thick strand of black thread was coiled inside his cup. The musicians stopped. The candles flickered. A gust of cold wind burst through the windows, scattering rice, knocking over dishes. From the ceiling above, water began to drip. Then came the whisper. "Who gave you the right?" The voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. Lord Wei rose, trembling. Suddenly, one of the noble ladies at the table, Madame Lean, who had once mocked Liane during her punishment, screamed and fell to the floor, clutching her face. "My eyes!" she cried. "She's here. She's looking through me." Her eyes rolled back, and she began to speak, but not in her own voice. "I drowned beneath your lies," the voice rasped. "Now you shall see as I saw, in blood and silence." Her mouth opened wide. From within, black water gushed out, soaking the floor in a pool of death. She collapsed, convulsing, as others ran in panic. Lord Wei ordered the house sealed. Guards were stationed, talismans nailed to every door frame. But you can't stop a spirit that has been betrayed. That same night, Lady Xian awoke again to the same sound, dripping water, and a soft knock on her door. She hesitated, then opened it. There, standing in the hallway, was Liane. Her face pale, her lips still sewn shut, but her eyes filled with sorrow. "Liane," Lady Xian choked out, "I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect you." Liane raised a hand and placed it gently on her mother's cheek. The air around them went still. And then she vanished into mist. Lady Xian collapsed in grief. Master Quan found her the next morning, huddled beside the altar, whispering Liane's name over and over. Elsewhere, in the shadows of Yu's Hollow, a darker truth was brewing. You see, the father of Liane's child had not disappeared. He had merely hidden like a coward. His name was Tao Wei, son of the magistrate. A young man with a smug smile and roving eyes, he had courted Liane under the guise of secret love, only to abandon her when she needed him most. Now, Tao began to dream. Every night, he would see Liane not beautiful and laughing, as she once was, but pale, dripping, broken. She would reach for him, mouth agape with thread, and whisper his name without sound. He would awaken drenched in sweat, clawing at his throat, only to find black thread curled beneath his pillow. Then the scratching began behind his walls, inside his floor, under his bed. Like fingernails clawing through wood. He would call for the servants. But they saw nothing. Until one night, his room exploded with screams. The walls bled. The mirrors cracked. Liane stood above his bed, her belly still torn from childbirth, and beside her floated a child small, with sunken eyes and a mouth sewn shut like its mother's. "Play with us, Tao," the child giggled. Tao tried to scream, but his jaw locked shut as if someone was stitching his lips from within. He thrashed and fell from the bed, blood pouring from his mouth, hands trembling. The next morning, they found him on the temple steps shaking, eyes wild, muttering nonsense. "She's here. She never left. She brings the river with her." No one believed him. No one, except the old hermit at the edge of the village. Yu's Hollow had always been superstitious, but now, fear clung to every roof tile and creaked in every floorboard. People whispered prayers under their breath. Doors were locked before sunset. The river, once a source of life, had become a channel of dread. Tao Wei, the magistrate's disgraced son, had not spoken since that night. He sat curled in a corner of the ancestral shrine, hands stuffed in his ears, eyes fixed on a place no one else could see. Only one man dared approach him, a man who had not been seen in the village for years. His name was Elder Yan, the hermit of the Black Pines. Yan was once a respected exorcist, until the villagers turned against him for dabbling in forbidden rituals. They said he consorted with spirits, made offerings in the dark, and walked between the worlds of the living and the dead. When Lian was condemned, he was one of the few who protested. But no one listened. Now, the village came crawling back to him. He arrived at Tao's side without a sound, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Tao flinched but did not look away from the void before him. "She's bound to the river," Yan said softly, "but the child walks freely." Lord Wei scoffed when he heard of the hermit's return. "That mad old man. He thinks he can stop a curse with chalk and incense." But even he began to tremble when the monastery bell cracked at midnight, despite no one ringing it. Elder Yan requested a ritual be held at the riverbank during the night of no moon, a sacred time when the veil between worlds was weakest. The villagers gathered, half out of hope, half out of fear. Some brought charms, others brought tears. As Yan stepped into the shallow waters, he drew symbols with salt, ash, and crimson dye. His voice rose in ancient tongue, calling not to banish, but to invite the spirit forward. And it answered. The wind stilled. The surface of the water turned black, then glass-like. From the mist rose Lian, her white gown soaked, her skin pale and stitched. In her arms, the child, more monstrous now, with hollow eyes and crooked limbs, suckled the darkness itself. Elder Yan held firm. "Lian Quan, daughter of Xian and Quan," he said. "You have suffered injustice. Speak, and let your name be known." Lian's sown lips twitched. Her eyes full of agony met Yan's. Then, to the horror of all present, she tore the stitches open with her own nails, flesh ripping, blood pouring. Her scream shattered the night. "Tao Wei betrayed me." The river roared. The villagers gasped. All eyes turned to Tao Wei, who had been brought in chains to witness the ritual. He screamed as his eyes rolled back, body twisting unnaturally. "Take him!" Lian shrieked. "Let him feel the pain of silence. Let him drown in shame." From the river, arms of water twisted into shape, skeletal, ancient, furious. They pulled Tao from the shore, dragging him under. His screams bubbled for seconds before vanishing beneath the surface. But Lian did not disappear. The child now stared at Elder Yan, its voice echoing in all their minds. "We are not done." The ritual circle exploded outward. Candles snuffed. The crowd scattered. Elder Yan fell to his knees, blood pouring from his ears. Later that night, he was found muttering a warning. She does not want justice. She wants reckoning. Back in the Quan family home, Lady Xian sat alone, clutching Lian's childhood blanket. The window creaked open. A soft voice whispered, "Mother." She turned. And for a moment, she saw her daughter again, not as a ghost, not as a monster, but as a child. Smiling. Innocent. Then the vision vanished, and she wept. Meanwhile, Lord Wei paced in his chambers, fear gripping his chest. He summoned his guards, ordered more talismans, hired monks from distant cities. But in the shadows of his room, a figure watched. A girl in white. A baby in her arms. And the storm had only just begun. The river was no longer silent. Every night, the wind carried whispers of the drowned. Cattle refused to drink from the stream. Children woke up screaming, eyes glazed, and mouths muttering ancient chants they'd never been taught. Even the monks summoned from the southern hills had fled, their sacred beads shattered, talismans scorched by invisible fire. Lord Wei had grown pale. The proud magistrate now barricaded himself inside his manor, lighting incense from dusk till dawn. He had not dared step near a mirror in days, not since the reflection showed a woman standing behind him, when no one was there. His son, Tao Wei, was gone, taken by the river in front of hundreds. There was no hiding it now. The curse was real. The shame could no longer be erased with threats and silver. But the truth was worse. Because deep in his heart, Lord Wei remembered. He remembered the night Lian came to his door, begging for justice, pleading that Tao take responsibility. He remembered how his wife, Madame Wrong, silenced the girl with sweet tea and a fake smile, and how he had nodded to the guards to escort her out. He remembered watching, from the balcony, as Lian stumbled away into the mist alone, pregnant, and terrified. And now, she was back. That night, as thunder rolled across Yu's Hollow, Elder Yan arrived at the gates of Lord Wei's estate. He did not knock. The doors opened on their own. Inside, Lord Wei sat with a blade on the table, not to defend himself, but to offer his life if it would end this nightmare. "You've come to banish her?" he asked quietly. Yan stepped forward, his robes damp from rain. "I came to warn you. Lian doesn't want your life. She wants your name." Lord Wei frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Yan said, "she will not be satisfied with death. She will curse your bloodline. Erase every trace of your family. Make you the legend that mothers whisper to children, to make them behave." A gust of wind blew out the candles. Only one remained flickering on the far end of the hall. A shadow stretched along the floor. Slowly, the light revealed a shape at the edge of the chamber. A girl in white. Her face was half buried in strands of wet hair. Her arms cradled a grotesque infant, its limbs malformed, its head limp, and its body stitched together like a broken doll. Blood dripped from its mouth, staining the white robe that had once been Leanne's burial shroud. "Speak her name," Yan whispered. "If you die without confessing, the curse will pass on to every soul in this house." But Lord Wei stood frozen, his pride shackled to his silence. The spirit stepped closer. From her stitched mouth came a voice not hers, not even human. It was the river itself speaking through her. Justice denied, his blood owed. Suddenly, Lord Wei clutched his chest. Veins turned black across his arms, eyes bulged. His lips stitched shut by invisible threads, blood seeping from the corners. "Speak." Elder Yan shouted. "Say her name." But it was too late. Lord Wei fell to the ground, twitching and then still. The spirit stepped over him, looking directly at Yan. Not with hate. Not with rage. But with a question. "Why didn't you stop them?" Yan sank to his knees. "Because I was afraid." The child in her arms began to cry. Its voice sounded like hundreds of whispers layered over each other, grieving, laughing, cursing. And then they vanished. The next morning, the village awoke to silence. Lord Wei's house was empty. No body. No blood. Just a single lotus floating in the center of the dining hall dyed red. But the curse did not end. One by one, villagers who had mocked Lian or turned their heads away began to suffer. Their homes filled with river water overnight. Their voices vanished mid-sentence. Threads appeared across their doorways, stitched into curses that no one could read but everyone feared. Lady Xian, Lian's mother, became a recluse. She stopped speaking altogether. She spent her days praying by the old cradle that had once belonged to Lian, now filled with lilies from the river. One day, a girl from the neighboring town came to her home. She claimed to be a traveler, lost in the storm. Lady Xian let her in. The girl looked familiar. Too familiar. She smiled with Lian's eyes. That night, the house burned to the ground but no body was found. Weeks passed. Elder Yan began crafting a final ritual. He knew now, Lian's rage could not be dispelled, only contained. A spirit of that depth, born of injustice, sorrow, and betrayal, had crossed into the realm of vengeful deities. He would need help. Sacrifice. Fire. He called upon the old gods of the valley, digging up forgotten relics buried in the shrine caves. He traced Lian's bloodline, discovering a bitter secret. Her ancestors had once been guardians of the river, protectors of sacred rites before the magistrates outlawed them. The curse, it seemed, was not merely revenge, it was a reckoning across generations. The village elders finally confessed. Long ago, they had betrayed the river guardians, sided with power instead of balance. Lian was the price of that betrayal. And now the river wanted it all back. Then let it come, Yan said, but I'll be the one to greet it. And as he drew the last circle of salt, the skies turned black. The river began to rise. And Yu's hollow braced for the flood. The moon did not rise that night. Instead, clouds hung heavy over Yu's hollow like a funeral shroud. The air was thick not with rain, but with something older, heavier, a silence born of unfinished justice. Elder Yan stood on the village's stone bridge, facing the dark waters below. In one hand, he held a staff carved with the sigils of the forgotten river gods. In the other, a satchel containing ash, bones, and something even he refused to name. Behind him stood a dwindling crowd, survivors, skeptics, and sinners alike. The village chief, old and trembling, the midwife who had once denied Lian help, the gossiping tailor, the cruel schoolmaster, all those who had watched her fall and done nothing. Above them, the wind began to moan. Yan raised his voice. Lian, daughter of the river, spirit of sorrow, bearer of injustice, we are here. Speak your truth. Take what is yours. The river responded. Not with ripples, but with a roar. From the depths, the surface cracked not like water, but like glass. And from beneath that shattered mirror rose a towering wave of blackness, not made of water alone, but faces. Twisted, drowned faces, the forgotten dead. Victims of past betrayals. Women shamed. Children thrown away. Lovers killed for crossing class. And in the center of it all, floating effortlessly, was Lian. Her body no longer bled. Her stitches were gone. Her white dress turned crimson. Her eyes glowing like coals swept over the crowd. Beside her floated her child, now grown into something neither human nor spirit, with eyes like mirrors that showed each soul's worst sin. She spoke. Yu's hollow was built on silence. Tonight, it drowns in its own voice. The tailor, the first to scream, tried to run. The river swallowed him whole. One by one, the guilty were pulled toward the water, their feet wrapped in spectral cords. As they fell, they didn't just scream, they confessed. I lied about her. I said I saw her with 3 men. I told the guards where she was hiding. I laughed when she was dragged naked through the street. Each confession became a chain. And each chain pulled them deeper. But then, a child stepped forward from the crowd. Her name was May, no more than 9. She was Lian's cousin, the only one who had ever left food at Lian's door during her imprisonment. She held a withered lotus flower, petals dried, faded. Lian, May said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry they hurt you. But please, not everyone did. The river paused. Lian looked at her. For a moment, just a moment, the glow in her eyes flickered. She reached a hand toward the child, and the monstrous wave stilled. but it was then that Madame Wrong appeared. Yes, Tao's mother. Her hair disheveled, clothes soaked, yet her voice filled with rage. You dare show yourself. You seduced my son. You ruined our family. She hurled a dagger toward Lien, a small, ornate blade once used in the magistrate's rituals. The blade never reached her. It froze midair and then turned, slowly, toward Madame Wrong. In a flash, it flew back, striking her through the chest. The curse was not done. Lien's voice shattered the sky. You raised the beast. You protected him. You fed me poison while smiling. Madame Wrong collapsed. Her body cracked, turning to porcelain, then shattered into dust. The village screamed. The river rose higher. But just as the waters reached the edge of the shrine, Elder Yan stepped into the current, letting it soak his robes. I offer myself, he said. Lien turned. I did not stop them. I failed you. Let me be your vessel, but spare the innocent. The spirit child floated closer. Its eyes stared deep into Yan's. He did not flinch. And for the first time since the curse began, the river began to recede. Lien's voice, softer now, whispered in the wind. Then carry my story. Her form dissolved into mist. The child followed. The black tide sank back into the earth. And silence returned. The next morning, the sun finally broke through the clouds. Yu's Hollow was changed. Over a dozen homes were gone. The magistrate's estate vanished. Those who had sinned most were never seen again. But Elder Yan lived, though his hair turned white as snow. From that day on, he wandered the land, carrying a book bound in red thread, marked with a single name. Lien. He never spoke again, except to whisper her story into the ears of children brave enough to listen. And by the river, if you visit on a moonless night, you might still hear a lullaby. One sung by a mother who was never heard, until she screamed. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the flood. The survivors of Yu's Hollow began rebuilding what they could. Charred beams were replaced, prayers were whispered, and the magistrate's vacant estate was torn down, every brick burned and buried beneath salt and ash. People smiled again, but not with their eyes. At the center of it all stood May, the girl who had offered Lien a lotus of peace. She was different now. Quiet. Watchful. Sometimes, villagers swore they saw her standing by the river, speaking to someone unseen. But when they called her name, she'd turn with a childlike grin and say, I was just listening. Elsewhere, Elder Yan wandered far beyond the village borders. His pilgrimage had one purpose, to seal the story. Lien had been heard, but not yet laid to rest. And something about the river, still whispered to him. He followed the water upstream, into the thick forested valleys of the black pines, where even crows feared to fly. There, hidden beneath moss and thyme, lay the ruins of an ancient bone shrine, the temple of the river mothers. Long before U's Hollow existed, this place had been sacred. It was where women came to pray for fertility, for safe births, and for justice when wronged. But it had been abandoned for centuries after the magistrates declared it heretical, the same era when the river guardians were betrayed. Yan entered the shrine alone. He lit a single red candle and sat before the cracked altar. Carved upon the walls were names, old names, many of them female. And near the altar lay a bundle wrapped in silk. It was a scroll, sealed with black wax. He opened it with trembling hands. And what he read made his blood freeze. The river does not choose vengeance. Vengeance is born when the cries of the unjust are silenced. One will rise. She will carry all the voices. And she will awaken the ones beneath. Lian had been only the beginning. That night, Yan dreamed. In his vision, Lian stood before him again, but not as a ghost, nor a mother. She was a priestess, clad in robes of river silk, eyes blindfolded with red thread, arms covered in runes. "You opened the door," she whispered. But I was only the echo. Behind her stood four shadows, towering, feminine, faceless. And then, rising from beneath them, something vast and ancient. Not human. Not spirit. Not of this world. He woke screaming. The candle had gone out. But the scroll now bore a new line not there before. They are waking. Back in U's Hollow, strange things returned. The river changed direction. Fish were found swimming upstream, with their eyes sewn shut. Children began drawing spirals in the mud without knowing why. And old men began muttering ancient names in their sleep, names no one had spoken in hundreds of years. Even May began to behave oddly. One morning, she approached Lady Xian, holding a bundle wrapped in black cloth. "This is hers," she said softly. "She wants you to keep it safe." Lady Xian opened it to find a small, preserved braid, Lian's childhood hair, tied with red silk. That night, Lady Xian dreamed of her daughter's laughter. And of voices beneath the laughter, voices calling her name. One evening, as Elder Yan prepared to leave the bone shrine, he found a figure waiting at the edge of the forest. It was a woman, tall and cloaked, her face veiled. She spoke without lips. "The river has been fed, but not satisfied." Yan stood firm. "What are you?" The woman tilted her head. "One of many. We are the mothers. We remember every injustice buried in the water." She stepped forward, revealing skeletal hands with rings carved of ivory. Lian was the first to scream, but now the others want to speak. Yan fell to his knees. "How do I stop it?" The air turned cold. She whispered. "You don't. You listen. and then she vanished. The story was spreading. Not just in Use Hollow, but to every village along the river's path. They said a girl in white had been seen walking through rice fields. That wells were filling with blood. That women long dead were returning in dreams to mothers, daughters, and granddaughters asking them one question. Do you remember me? The final words of Jan's journal before the ink bled off the page were, "This is no longer about one spirit. This is a reckoning of all forgotten voices. The river is not a curse. It is a memory that refuses to be drowned." And Use Hollow. It began to sink. The river had always flowed quietly, snaking its way through valleys and forgotten shrines, whispering beneath wooden bridges and bamboo groves. But not anymore. Now, it roared. Its banks had swollen, not with rain, but with stories. Each drop of water seemed to carry a face, a voice, a scream. The villagers no longer dared speak the name Lian. They whispered instead of the Red One, or the womb below. Elder Yan returned to Use Hollow with eyes that no longer blinked and hands that trembled constantly. He spoke little, but when he did, it was in riddles. The river is a mirror. We are drowning in our own reflections. He had brought something back, a stone tablet covered in glyphs that glowed faintly under moonlight. At night, the glyphs shifted, rearranged, almost, breathing. Yan gathered the village's last remaining elders. This was never about one girl, he told them. Lian was only the voice we refused to hear. But there are hundreds more. Maybe thousands. And they are no longer content to whisper. He placed the stone tablet on the altar of the old shrine. The air turned still. Candles flickered, despite the absence of wind. Then came a sound. A baby crying. From the river. Not one voice but many. Layered. Hollow. And not of this world. At the edge of the village, May wandered the rice paddies barefoot. Her eyes were unfocused, and her lips moved without sound. Lady Xian, now frail but lucid, followed the girl through the field. "May, sweetheart," she called. "Come back. It's getting dark." May stopped near a twisted old tree that bent over a dried-up canal. She turned and smiled. "They told me where the bones are buried." Lady Xian froze. "What bones?" May reached into the earth with her bare hands and began digging. Her small fingers pulled apart the cracked soil with unnatural strength. Within minutes, she unearthed a skull, small, cracked, and ancient. "They weren't the first," May whispered. "The magistrates have always buried their secrets." Lady Xian dropped to her knees. There were dozens of skulls beneath the rice paddy. Some were infants. Some still had thread in their jaws. That night, the stars disappeared. Not from the sky but from the memories of the people. Astronomers looked up and saw constellations rearranged, unfamiliar. The river was changing the world, not just the village. Dreams turned to visions. Men who had never wronged a soul awoke screaming, their fingers bleeding from clawing at invisible threads sewn into their skin. Women, especially those whose mothers or grandmothers had been silenced, began sleepwalking all toward the riverbank. Yan tried to warn them. Memory is not a straight line. When you deny a scream long enough, it echoes backward. From the east, a wandering pilgrim arrived, a woman named Suli, clad in layers of ash-gray robes and carrying a staff wrapped in infant cloth. She claimed to be from the ruined city of Tsu, a place that had once outlawed childbirth among the poor, where thousands of newborns had been drowned in secret. "I heard her call," she said. "Not just Lian. All of them." Yan recognized her aura. She was touched, someone who had been chosen by the river. Or possessed by it? She warned. "There's a name carved beneath the flow. An entity deeper than spirit or goddess. It sleeps beneath the roots of the river. It is waking." She called it Manu, the first mourner. An entity birthed from the pain of every erased woman. Every child abandoned. Every scream that never echoed. "And when Manu wakes," Suli whispered, "there will be no land. Only water. Only memory." Back in the village, strange marks began appearing on walls. Not paint. Not blood. Milk. Flowing upward, dripping like tears. Those who touched it collapsed into seizures, muttering languages no one could translate. Elder Yan summoned Suli to the shrine. Together, they stood before the stone tablet, which now pulsed like a heartbeat. She placed her hand upon it and screamed. For several long minutes, her body stiffened. Her eyes rolled back. Then, her mouth opened and a voice not her own spoke. "You took our names. You burned our cradles. We are the wives of salt. The mothers of thread. And we remember." The wind howled. The river outside the shrine flowed backward. That night, the villagers gathered around the old bridge, the same one where Lian's raft had once drifted. From the mist rose a procession. Not just Lian, but dozens of women, young and old, wearing funeral robes soaked in river water. Their mouths were open but no sound came. Instead, the water spoke for them. "Who will name us? Who will bury us? Who will carry the sorrow that you abandoned?" Then, one by one, they stepped onto the land. And the land withered. Grass turned to ash. Bamboo shriveled. The sky cracked open in threads of red lightning. Elder Yan collapsed. His last words before slipping into unconsciousness. This isn't a haunting anymore, it's a return. As dawn broke, the river ran red. Not with blood but with ink. Names began appearing on the river's surface, written in cursive that no human hand could replicate. Each name a soul forgotten. Each wave a prayer unanswered. And Yews Hollow was no longer a village. It was now an altar. The air hung heavy with dread as Yews Hollow slipped further into the grasp of the unseen. No one dared walk near the river at night, for those who did never returned the same. Some came back silent, others maddened, their eyes hollow, mouth stitched shut in nightmares come alive. Elder Yan, weakened but unyielding, gathered May and Suli beneath the ancient black pines, near the ruined bone shrine. The stone tablet throbbed faintly in Yan's trembling hands, its glyphs whispering secrets in the cold wind. "We have awakened them," Yan said hoarsely. "The river mothers. They hunger not for revenge alone, but for justice restored to every forgotten name." Suddenly, a chill swept through the trees. The ground beneath them trembled. From the mist, a spectral choir emerged, 5 towering female figures, draped in flowing silk woven with threads of silver and blood. Their faces were obscured, eyes covered with scarlet veils stitched with ancient runes. Each carried a relic, a broken cradle, a shattered mirror, a rusted blade, a torn shroud, and a wilted lotus. Suli whispered, "The 5 wives of salt. Guardians of the river's memory." Lian appeared at their center, her body now radiant, her mouth free but carrying the silent weight of countless sorrows. Her child, no longer grotesque but ethereal, danced among the mothers, the embodiment of forgotten lives. Back in Yews Hollow, the village elders convened in secret. The magistrate's estate was no more, but its legacy remained a thick fog of fear and denial. Lady Xian, fragile but fierce, stood before them. "I have held the braid of my daughter," she began, voice steady despite tears. "She carries our pain. We cannot run. We must answer the river's call or be consumed by it." The elders murmured uneasily, but a young man stepped forward, June, a scholar who had once studied the old ways but had since turned to logic and reason. "This is superstition," June declared. "Ghosts are the creations of frightened minds. The river is a river. The dead are dead." His words drew a hush until May entered, holding a wet, red-stained parchment. "I found this," she said. "Written on the river's edge." June took the parchment. The ink was fresh, glowing faintly, symbols twisting and changing before his eyes. "Speak our names," the words read. Jun's confident smile faltered. That night, the river began to rise again. Water lapped against doorsteps, seeping into cellars and filling wells. Villagers awoke to find their homes flooded, yet the water was icy cold, smelling faintly of salt and old blood. One by one, the cursed began to hear the calls, a chorus of whispers that only they could understand. "Remember us. Free us. Return what was stolen." Elder Yan and Suli prepared a desperate ritual to calm the river mothers, but as the night deepened, it became clear, this was not a battle for survival, but for memory. The spirits demanded recognition. At the riverbank, the 5 wives of Salt rose in full form, their voices melding into a single, haunting lament. You buried us beneath your laws. Silenced our cries with your fear. Drowned our children in your greed. Now, we take back what is ours. Blood for blood, name for name. The water churned violently, and the river's surface fractured, revealing the faces of hundreds, maybe thousands, long lost to silence. Meanwhile, June found himself plagued by dreams of the river, visions of Lian, her face wet with tears and blood, holding out her hand. Tell them, she whispered. Tell them the truth. Awakening with a start, June knew his skepticism was broken. The river had claimed him too. He sought out Lady Xian and Mei. We must speak their names, he said, voice trembling. And confess, Lady Xian added, for only by facing our sins can we find peace. As dawn broke, Yu's Hollow gathered for the naming ceremony, a sacred rite to honor the forgotten. Each villager stepped forward, recounting the names of those who had been lost, those who had been silenced by fear and shame. With every name spoken aloud, a wave of warm light rose from the river, carrying the souls toward freedom. But just as hope blossomed, a new shadow loomed. The river mother's lament turned to a cry of rage as the ground beneath the shrine cracked open. From the depths, something stirred, ancient, hungry, and far older than Lian or the village itself. The first mourner was awakening. The night closed in. Yu's Hollow stood on the edge of oblivion, between memory and forgetfulness, life and death. The earth trembled beneath Yu's Hollow like the heartbeat of a restless beast. From the cracked ground of the ancient bone shrine, a thick fog poured forth, swirling with whispers of anguish and forgotten prayers. The villagers backed away in horror as the fog coalesced into a colossal form, a woman cloaked in tattered silk woven from river reeds and shadow. Her face was a pale mask of sorrow, eyes empty voids stitched shut with red thread. She was the first mourner, the primordial spirit born from the suffering of every woman denied justice, every child lost to silence, every name erased from history. Her voice was the echo of 1,000 lamentations. I am the beginning and the end, the mother of all forgotten. You built your laws on my bones, and now, I rise to reclaim what is mine. Lightning cracked the sky as she stretched out her skeletal hands. The river behind her roared in response, flooding the shrine, drowning the altar in water that smelled of salt and blood. In the village, Mei clutched the red silk braid tightly, feeling a pulse like a heartbeat within it. She was the chosen vessel, the link between the living and the spirits. That night, she dreamt of the first mourner, who reached out to her with both a warning and a plea. You hold the thread that binds us. Choose, break the curse, or let it unravel the world. Mei awoke to find the braid glowing faintly. She knew her time had come. Meanwhile, Elder Yan, weakened from constant battles with unseen forces, prepared the final ritual with Suli and the remaining villagers. The air was thick with magic, fear, and desperation. Yan's voice rang out. The river remembers. The river demands balance. Tonight, we face the first mourner. As they began chanting, the ground shook violently. From the depths, the first mourner's form expanded, towering over them all. She whispered, "Sacrifice will sever the thread, but at what cost?" Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. June, the skeptical scholar, now transformed by visions. He held an ancient dagger etched with river runes. "I offer myself." The ritual became a battle of wills. June approached the spirit, dagger gleaming. The first mourner's veil lifted, revealing hollow eyes filled with both rage and sorrow. As the dagger pierced her ethereal chest, a scream shattered the night. But instead of death, the spirit smiled. "You cannot kill memory. You can only choose how it lives on." In that moment, the river's floodwaters surged, carrying the villagers' confessions, their fears, and their hopes. May stepped forward, holding the glowing braid aloft. "Let the thread bind us not as chains, but as lifelines." With a brilliant flash, the river calmed. The first mourner's form faded into the mist, leaving behind a single red lotus floating atop the water. The dawn brought peace. Yu's hollow was forever changed, scarred, but free. Elder Yan smiled weakly. "The river will always remember. But now, so do we." The calm after the storm was fragile, like a spider's web trembling in the wind. Yu's hollow had survived the rise and fall of the first mourner, but the river's memory was far from erased. It had only changed form. Elder Yan, weakened but determined, stayed close to the bone shrine, guarding the ancient relics and the glowing red braid, the symbol of the villagers' pact with the river spirits. May, now no longer a child but a guardian, carried a burden heavier than most could understand. The braid pulsed with a life of its own, weaving threads of the past, present, and future, connecting every soul in the village. But not all threads were pure. In the shadows of the magistrate's ruined estate, June wrestled with the darkness born of his sacrifice. Though his body had survived, his spirit was trapped between worlds, a liminal being caught in the weave of river memories and human fears. He heard whispers, voices begging for release, and commands to bind the living. One night, as the moon dipped low, June encountered a mysterious figure, a woman cloaked in black, her eyes like twin abysses. She called herself the Weaver. "You pierced the first mourner's heart, but the tapestry is not whole," she said. "Threads must be mended, or the fabric of your world will unravel." June felt the weight of her words like chains. She reached out, weaving invisible threads between his fingers, threads that glowed with crimson light. "You are both prisoner and key. Choose wisely which threads you cut, and which you let bind forever." Meanwhile, Yu's hollow began to change in strange ways. The river's water turned crystal clear by day but black as ink by night. Villagers reported dreams of past lives, memories of ancestors they never met, of secrets buried beneath the riverbed. Children whispered to empty fields. Old women lit candles for forgotten souls. And through it all, May heard the river's song, a haunting melody threading through the wind, calling her deeper into the woods, toward a place older than memory. One afternoon, May followed the call to a hidden cave beneath the black pines. There, carved into stone, she found an ancient tapestry, threads frayed but colors vivid. It depicted the story of the river mothers, how they once nurtured the land and guarded the balance between life and death. But in the corner, a new figure appeared, a dark shadow, a breaking thread, a tear in the weave. May touched the tapestry, and the threads shimmered, pulling her into visions. She saw Use Hollow, centuries ago, a thriving community ruled by the river mothers and guided by wisdom. Then, a betrayal. Magistrates rose, laws twisted, the sacred river cursed. The tapestry began to unravel. As May collapsed, Elder Yan and Suli found her unconscious, her hands clutching the glowing braid. "She has seen the breaking," Suli whispered. "The curse is not just about forgotten souls, it's about the very fate of this world." Yan nodded grimly. "We must mend the threads, or everything will be lost." That night, June confronted the weaver once more. "What do you want from me?" he demanded. She smiled, cold and knowing. "To finish the weaving. To restore the balance. But balance demands sacrifice." Her fingers danced through the air, weaving a vision, the village swallowed by water, twisted by shadow, forgotten in time. Only by embracing the darkness within can the light survive. Jun's heart pounded. The choice was his: sever the cursed threads and risk chaos, or weave himself deeper into the curse, a guardian of both life and death. As dawn approached, Use Hollow awoke to a new reality. The river was calm, but beneath its surface, threads of fate were pulling tighter. The village's destiny was no longer theirs to decide. The calm was a lie. Use Hollow slept uneasily beneath a sky heavy with storm clouds. The river, once a giver of life, had become a mirror reflecting the village's darkest sins and unspoken secrets. The glowing red braid, symbol of the pact with the river mothers, pulsed stronger in May's hands, like a heartbeat sinking with the restless water. Elder Yan sat cross-legged before the bone shrine, his voice steady as he spoke ancient prayers to keep the threads from unraveling completely. Yet, the ground beneath the shrine continued to crack, revealing glimpses of a shadow deeper than any spirit they had faced, the first mourner, stirring beneath the earth, gathering strength. Jun's presence was felt everywhere, though he walked neither fully in this world nor the next. His skin paled, eyes hollow, as the weaver's threads wrapped him tighter. The line between savior and prisoner blurred with every breath he took. One night, June awoke gasping, the tapestry's image burning behind his eyelids. He heard the weaver's voice whispering inside his mind. "You must choose, June. Sever the thread of fate and chaos consumes all. Or become the weaver's hand and bind the broken world." Haunted by visions of flooded fields, shattered homes, and river spirits rising in wrath, June knew his decision would shape the village's fate or its doom. Meanwhile, May's dreams became portals. She saw the village as it once was vibrant, filled with laughter and rituals honoring the river's true power. The river mothers, radiant and merciful, taught the people harmony between earth and water, life and death. But then she saw the betrayal magistrates and priests burning shrines, drowning midwives, sewing mouths shut to silence dissent. The river mothers became mourners, their sorrow turning to rage, their tears staining the waters red. The tapestry she discovered wasn't just a story, it was a warning. By the riverbank, strange phenomena escalated. Babies born with faint red threads woven naturally into their hair. Crops growing twisted, reflecting the broken weave of fate. The villagers' reflections in water distorted, some faces smiling, others screaming silently. Old Mrs. Han, a midwife who had survived the purge years ago, confided to Lady Xian. The curse isn't just about past sins anymore. It's reaching forward, marking futures. We're tangled in a web that's centuries old and it's tightening. One stormy evening, as thunder rumbled over the valley, the village gathered for a council. Elder Yan spoke gravely. The first mourner wakes, gathering her daughters. The weaver's threads bind us all. To survive, we must perform the great weaving a ritual to mend the tapestry of souls and balance the river's memory. May stepped forward, clutching the red braid. I will lead the ceremony. June, pale but resolute, nodded in support. And I will bind the threads. The preparation took days. Villagers fashioned silk ribbons dyed in river mud and flower petals. Sacred chants were taught, weaving hands practiced movements that synchronized with river rhythms. The shrine was cleansed with salt and burning herbs. At night, spectral forms appeared, dancing among the bamboo groves. The river mothers, their faces veiled, their movements sorrowful and beautiful. On the night of the great weaving, the river's surface shimmered unnaturally, glowing with silver and crimson light. Elder Yan began the chant, voice rising and falling like the water's flow. May wove the braid into a circle, the threads glowing brighter with each motion. June stepped forward, dagger in hand, carefully severing and reconnecting strands, a delicate dance between life and death, past and present. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the ground. The first mourner rose, no longer just a shadow but a blazing avatar of grief and wrath. You cannot mend what you do not understand, she screamed. The river surged violently, threatening to swallow the village whole. In that moment, May stepped into the flood waters, braid glowing like a beacon. She sang a haunting melody passed down from the river mothers themselves. Her voice wove through the storm, calming the waves, soothing the spirit. June joined, his hands moving faster, binding the threads with newfound purpose. Slowly, the flood receded. The first mourner's form softened, her veil lifted to reveal tear-streaked eyes. You have begun to remember, she whispered. And then she vanished. The dawn brought a fragile peace. Use Hollow was forever changed, its people bound by threads of memory, their past and future entwined with the river's eternal flow. Elder Yan smiled faintly, eyes closing. The weaving is not done, but the path is clearer. The village of Use Hollow awoke under a heavy sky, the air thick with anticipation and fear. Though the great weaving ritual had seemingly calmed the river's rage, the threads of fate still hummed with a restless energy, a reminder that some stories are never truly finished. Elder Yan's health was waning. His eyes, once sharp and commanding, had dulled, his voice, once steady and strong, now trembled with every word. Yet, the weight of the village's fate rested squarely on his frail shoulders. Meanwhile, May felt an unshakable pull deep within her bones, a call that beckoned her toward the heart of the Black Pines forest, beyond the ruined bone shrine. The red braid around her wrist pulsed with a warmth she could no longer ignore. Late one evening, under a sky choked with swirling clouds, May ventured into the forest alone. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their twisted branches weaving together to form a living canopy that swallowed the moonlight. As she walked, the whispers grew louder, voices from the river, calling her name in a mournful chorus. She reached a clearing, where the ground was scattered with bones and fragments of broken pottery. At the center lay a massive web, spun not by spider but by invisible hands, a delicate lattice of glowing red threads stretching from tree to tree, pulsing with spectral light. May stepped into the web, and suddenly, visions flooded her mind. Centuries ago, before Use Hollow was a village, the river was guarded by a coven of women, the original river mothers. They wove the fabric of life and death with threads of magic, binding the souls of the living to the river's eternal flow. One of these women, Suyin, had fallen in love with a mortal. Betrayed by her sisters for breaking the sacred laws, she was cast into the river's depths, her name erased from memory. Her sorrow grew into a curse, the web of silence, a trap to catch those who dared to forget, weaving their souls into the river's eternal tapestry. Back in the present, May realized the truth. The red braid was not just a symbol but a key, one that could unlock the web of silence and free the souls trapped within. But doing so came with a price. At the village, Elder Yan gathered the remaining villagers. The web is alive, he warned. It holds those who died in silence, their stories lost. To break the curse, we must untangle the threads, but some threads belong to us all. June, still wrestling with the weaver's influence, stood beside Yan, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. The weaver demands a sacrifice, he said. Someone must become part of the web to save the rest. A hush fell over the crowd. That night, May, Yan, June, and Suli performed a solemn ritual beneath the black pines. The glowing web shimmered, strands weaving and unweaving as May sang an ancient song taught by the river mothers. As the song reached its crescendo, the web began to pulse violently. Suddenly, spectral hands emerged from the threads, grabbing at the villagers. Yan pushed May back. The web does not give up easily. June stepped forward, dagger in hand, slicing through a thick red strand. A scream echoed not from this world. May reached into the web, feeling the cold touch of countless souls. Among them, she recognized the voice of Suyin. Free me, the voice whispered. Free us all. May nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. We will. As dawn approached, the ritual concluded. The web shimmered one last time, then dissolved into the morning mist. The trapped souls were freed, rising in a luminous wave that swept over Yews Hollow, bathing the village in radiant light. But the price was steep. May's body began to glow, her form slowly dissolving into threads of red and silver. No, Yan cried. You cannot. May smiled softly. The river's memory flows through me now. I am the thread that binds the past and future. With a final breath, she vanished, becoming one with the river. The village mourned and celebrated in equal measure. The curse was broken, but the river's story would live on through May's sacrifice. Elder Yan, now the last guardian, inscribed the tale into the stone tablet, a warning and a remembrance. May no one forget. But as the sun rose, June felt the weaver's threads tighten once more around his heart. The battle was not over. The river whispered secrets only the brave dared hear. Years had passed since May's sacrifice. Yews Hollow had healed, its scars faded like morning mist, but its heart still beat in tune with the river's flow. Elder Yan, once a fierce guardian, was now a shadow of himself, a keeper of memories, a teller of tales. June wandered the village, still bound by the weaver's threads, caught between worlds. But peace was a fragile illusion. One stormy night, as the river swelled with a fury unseen before, a chilling voice echoed across the water. The web is never truly undone. The thread remains. The story awaits its final weave. From the depths, the water erupted and the first mourner returned. No longer alone. Behind her rose the 5 wives of Salt, their faces unveiled, beautiful and terrible, eyes blazing with ancient sorrow. They sought what was stolen, the last thread, the thread that bound life and death, the soul of Yews Hollow itself. Elder Yan gathered what remained of the villagers. The curse returns to demand its price. We must face it together. June, now fully embracing his role as Weaver's vessel, stepped forward. I will weave the final thread. The villagers prepared for a ritual unlike any before. The river, the forest, the very air pulsed with anticipation. The ceremony began beneath a blood-red moon. June wove the red braid once more, threading through lives, memories, hopes, and fears. May's spirit danced among the villagers, guiding the hands of those who dared to remember. The first mourner and her sisters rose from the river, their voices a storm of grief and power. A fierce battle of wills ensued, threads of light and shadow entwining, the fate of the village hanging by a fragile stitch. In the final moments, June faced a terrible choice. To sever the last thread would mean losing Yews Hollow, forever swallowed by oblivion. To bind it would mean carrying the curse eternally, a guardian of sorrow and memory. He looked to May's spirit, her smile a beacon of hope and sacrifice. With a deep breath, June wove the thread tightly, binding the past, present, and future. The river calmed. The spirits found peace. Use Hollow breathed anew. Elder Yan, watching from the shadows, whispered. Memory is eternal. As long as we remember, the river flows. Title: The Curse of Use Hollow, the haunting legend of the River Mothers, a terrifying tale of betrayal and revenge. Description: Deep within the secluded village of Use Hollow lies a dark secret, an ancient curse born from betrayal, silence, and forgotten souls. Follow the haunting journey of Lian, a young woman condemned by cruel laws, whose tragic fate awakens the wrath of the River Mother's primordial spirits demanding justice and remembrance. From harrowing rituals to terrifying hauntings, the Curse of Use Hollow reveals the chilling consequences when the past refuses to be forgotten. Will the villagers mend the broken threads of fate, or will the river's memory drown them all? Dive into this atmospheric ghost story filled with suspense, sorrow, and supernatural vengeance. Perfect for fans of folklore, dark fantasy, and horror legends.